In a small village outside Lagos, Nigeria, the Thompson family had lived in the same compound for over 60 years. 3 generations had been born there, raised there, and called it home. But one morning in 2023, they woke up to find strangers with bulldozers at their gate, claiming the land belonged to someone else. What followed was a battle that would uncover secrets buried in dusty village records for decades. The Thompson family's story began in 1958 when James Thompson, a railway worker, purchased the land from the village council. He built a modest house, raised 5 children there, and watched his grandchildren play in the same courtyard. His daughter Grace now lived there with her own family, keeping the compound exactly as her father had left it when he died in 2015. The strangers at the gate were led by a businessman named Victor Okonkwo. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase full of documents. "This land belongs to my family," he announced loudly. "We have the papers to prove it. You people are squatters and you need to leave immediately." Grace's Thompson couldn't believe what she was hearing. Grace's hands were shaking as she faced Victor. "My father bought this land 65 years ago. We have the original deed. We've paid our taxes every single year. This is our home." Victor smiled coldly. "Your father's deed is worthless. My grandfather owned this land before 1958. Your family has been living on stolen property for decades." The village erupted in chaos. News spread fast in close-knit communities, and within an hour, neighbors had gathered at the Thompson compound. Everyone knew the family. They'd lived there longer than most people could remember. But Victor had something they didn't: a team of lawyers and documents that looked official. The police arrived to prevent violence. Grace's son, David, was a teacher in Lagos. When he got his mother's frantic call, he dropped everything and drove the 3 hours back to the village. He found his family surrounded by legal threats and a demolition order giving them 72 hours to vacate. "We need to fight this," he told his mother, "but we need help." David contacted the only person he knew who might help, a young lawyer named Chioma Nosu who'd grown up in a neighboring village. She specialized in land disputes, and she'd seen cases like this before. Wealthy developers would find old colonial-era documents or forge traditional claims, then use intimidation to steal land from families who'd lived there for generations. Chioma drove to the village that same evening. She sat with the Thompson family and examined every document they had: the original deed from 1958, signed by the village council, tax receipts going back decades, photographs showing the family's continuous residence. "This is good," she said, "but we need to see what Victor actually has, and more importantly, we need to check the village land registry." The village land registry was kept in a small cement building that looked like it hadn't been updated since colonial times. Thick ledgers bound in leather, some dating back to the 1800s, filled dusty shelves. The village clerk, an elderly man named Mr. Adeleke, had been maintaining these records for 40 years. He knew every transaction, every transfer, every dispute. Chioma requested to see all records related to the disputed land parcel. Mr. Adeleke disappeared into the stacks and returned with 3 massive ledgers. As he opened the first one, the spine cracked with age. The entries were in careful handwriting, some in English, some in local languages. Each transaction told a story of the village's history. They traced the land's ownership backwards through time. 1958, James Thompson purchases from village council. 1942, land declared community property after colonial redistribution. 1927, 3 families share traditional usage rights. Chioma's finger stopped on an entry from 1912. She said quietly, "Look at this." The 1912 entry showed that the land had been part of a large estate owned by a British colonial administrator. When he left Nigeria in 1925, the colonial government seized the property and redistributed it to local families. There was no record of any Okonkwo family ever owning this specific parcel. Victor's claim had no foundation in the official records. But Chioma wasn't satisfied yet. If Victor has documents supporting his claim, they either reference a different piece of land or they are forged. We need to see them. The next morning, they went to court to request that Victor produce his evidence. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Justice Okonkwo, no relation to Victor, ordered both parties to present all documentation within 1 week. That week was tense. The Thompson family couldn't sleep. Bulldozers remained parked outside their compound as a constant threat. Neighbors brought food and offered support, sharing stories of other families who'd lost their land to similar schemes. David spent every night helping Chioma organize their evidence, building a timeline that proved continuous Thompson family ownership since 1958. On the day of the hearing, both sides presented their evidence. Victor's lawyers went first. They produced what they claimed was a deed from 1945 showing Okonkwo family ownership. They had survey maps, tax records, and even photographs. It looked impressive. The Thompson family exchanged worried glances. How could they compete with such a professional presentation? Then it was Chioma's turn. She didn't have fancy presentations or multiple lawyers. She had something better: the truth and the village records. She began by asking Mr. Adeleke, the village clerk, to take the stand. Mr. Adeleke, she said, in your 40 years maintaining the village land registry, have you ever seen any record of the Okonkwo family owning the disputed property? His answer was clear: never. Chioma then presented the village ledgers themselves. She walked the judge through every entry from 1912 forward, showing the unbroken chain of legitimate ownership ending with the Thompson family. She pointed out that Victor's alleged 1945 deed referenced a completely different land parcel in a neighboring village. His entire claim was based on either a deliberate fraud or a massive mistake. Victor's lead lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, these old ledgers could have been tampered with. We request a forensic examination. Justice Okonkwo peered over her glasses. These ledgers have been in continuous official custody for over a century. They bear government seals on every page. Your documents, however, appear to be recently produced. I'm more interested in examining your evidence for authenticity. The judge ordered a recess and took both sets of documents to examine privately. The Thompson family waited in the courthouse hallway praying. Chioma reviewed her notes, confident but cautious. Victor paced near the windows, his expensive lawyers arguing among themselves. After 2 hours that felt like days, the court reconvened. Justice Okonkwo returned to her bench. The courtroom went silent. I have examined all evidence presented, she began. The village land registry provides clear, authenticated records of ownership dating back over a century. Mr. Victor Okonkwo's documents upon close inspection contain several irregularities. The signatures appear modern, the paper shows no age. Most tellingly, they reference a completely different property entirely. The judge continued. Furthermore, a forensic expert I consulted confirmed that Mr. Okonkwo's deed was created no more than 5 years ago using modern printing techniques designed to simulate age. This court finds that the documents presented by Mr. Okonkwo are fraudulent. The Thompson family's ownership is hereby confirmed and protected under law. The courtroom erupted. The Thompson family embraced, crying tears of joy and relief. Chioma smiled quietly, satisfied that justice had prevailed. Victor's lawyers quickly packed their briefcases and left. Victor himself sat frozen, realizing he'd been caught in an attempted fraud. The judge wasn't finished. Mr. Okonkwo, you will face criminal charges for forgery and attempted land fraud.
Outside the courthouse, the Thompson family was met by dozens of neighbors and villagers who'd been waiting for news. When they heard the verdict, celebrations erupted. David lifted his mother off her feet in joy. Papa's land is safe, Grace kept saying through tears. Papa's legacy is protected. The bulldozers that had threatened their home were towed away that same afternoon. The story spread across the region. Chioma's law office was flooded with calls from other families facing similar land grabs. Victor Okonkwo was arrested and charged with fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. His investigation revealed he'd attempted the same scheme on 5 other families in different villages. Thanks to the Thompson case, all those families could now fight back with evidence. The village council held a special meeting to honor Mr. Adeleke for maintaining the records that saved the Thompson family. These ledgers aren't just old books, the council chairman said. They are our history. They are our protection against those who would steal our heritage. The village voted to digitize all records and create backup copies in multiple secure locations. Grace Thompson invited Chioma to their family compound for a celebration. Under the same mango tree where her father used to sit, they shared a meal with neighbors and family. My father always said that the truth has deep roots like this tree. No storm can blow it down. You helped us prove that. Chioma smiled. The truth was in the records. I just knew where to look. 3 months later, the village erected a small monument at the land registry building. A plaque honored Mr. Adeleke and all the clerks who'd maintained the records through generations. It read, "The truth is written here. Our history protects our future." The Thompson case had become a landmark precedent in land rights law across the region. David Thompson, inspired by the experience, began studying law. He wanted to help other families protect their land and heritage. His mother framed the court's final judgment and hung it in the same room where her father's original deed had always been displayed. 2 documents, 65 years apart, telling the same truth. This land belonged to the Thompson family. Victor Okonkwo was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all the families he'd attempted to defraud. His properties were seized to cover the payments. The message was clear. Land fraud would not be tolerated, and those who preyed on honest families would face serious consequences. The legal system had worked, slowly but surely. The Thompson compound remained exactly as it had been for 65 years. Children still played in the courtyard. The mango trees still provided shade. The walls still held memories of 3 generations. But now those walls were legally protected by a court order, backed by historical records, and defended by a community that understood the value of truth and documentation. So, remember the Thompson family story the next time you wonder why documentation matters, why keeping records is important, why historical archives deserve protection and funding. Those dusty ledgers in a small village registry saved a family's home. They exposed a criminal. They protected an entire community's heritage. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against injustice is simply the truth, carefully preserved. Today, the Thompson family hosts an annual gathering on the anniversary of their court victory. Families from across the region who won their own land cases come to celebrate. Chioma always attends, now with her own team of young lawyers dedicated to land rights. And Mr. Adeleke, though retired, still visits the registry to ensure the records are properly maintained, because the truth must be protected. The case became a teaching tool in law schools across Nigeria. Students study how proper documentation defeated fraud, how community records protected individual rights, how one family's courage to fight back started a movement. The Thompson versus Okonkwo case is now cited in land disputes throughout West Africa as proof that justice can prevail when truth is properly documented. Grace Thompson is now 72 years old. She sits under the mango tree every evening, just like her father did, watching her grandchildren play in the same courtyard where she played as a child. The compound has been officially registered as a protected family heritage site. No one can ever take it again. Her father's legacy is secure for generations to come. The story of the Thompson family proves something important. Injustice can be fought. Fraud can be exposed. The powerful don't always win, but it requires courage, community support, proper documentation, and people willing to stand up for what is right. Grace's father bought that land honestly in 1958. 65 years later, her family still calls it home. That's not just a legal victory, that's justice. So, the next time someone tells you that fighting back is useless, that the system is rigged, that ordinary families can't win against wealthy fraudsters, remember the Thompsons. Remember Chioma, who knew where to look for truth. Remember Mr. Adeleke, who preserved that truth for 40 years. Remember that dusty ledgers in a village registry held more power than expensive lawyers with fake documents. The truth, when properly preserved, is unbeatable.